J. Cole finally responded to Kendrick Lamar, and it looks like he wants a fight. The track clearly takes aim at Kendrick Lamar, and I'd be lying if I didn't say it was a bit exciting, at least in terms of what's to come. However, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it felt like J. Cole dropped the ball. And to understand what I mean, let's just get right into it. Hit a like, hit a sub, but yeah, let's just talk about 7-Minute Drill. I think coming into this beef, the guy that stands the most to benefit is J. Cole. Everybody knows that J. Cole has been treated as the middle child of the big three. As J. Cole says, they handed him the bronze. So if there's anybody that stands to benefit out of this beef, I believe it's J. Cole, at least in terms of how the public sees him, and especially in terms of how his legacy looks. To be able to say that you outbarred Kendrick Lamar would put J. Cole basically at GOAT status, especially because he already has a great resume. This would just prove that he can also battle with the best of them, which is why I was excited when I saw that J. Cole dropped an album, because I was sure that he was going to reply to Kendrick, and he did.
Some attention, it come with extensions.
He starts off the track by basically saying that his friend told him that Kendrick dissed him, and he gives off the energy that he doesn't want to diss him, but if it's beef, it's beef. And though it's not the greatest bar of all time and whatnot, I do think it's a decent way of starting a diss track. And then he actually disses Kendrick.
He's still doing shows, but fell off like the Simpsons.
Now, saying that someone fell off like the Simpsons, I guess isn't the worst part ever, but it's pretty fucking bad compared to what Kendrick Lamar was saying.
The fuck the big three, nigga, it's just big me, nigga.
I think it should be worth mentioning that the reason why Kendrick Lamar's diss was as hyped as it wasn't just because he mentioned J. Cole and Drake. Or not mentioned, but took shots at them. It was mainly because the bars that were directed at the two were really, really good.
If he walk around with that stick, it ain't Andre 3000.
The Andre 3000 bar is probably the bar of the year, if not for the K9 bar, and simply Cole has to do better. Which is my main issue with this track. It feels like it's too much and not enough at the same time. Like, I feel like it's too many bars directed at Kendrick, at least in the way that for the most part, the energy levels are not there. And on top of that, the lyricism is kind of not there either. There's also a whole belief in terms of 7-Minute Drill that, oh, it's not supposed to be that good because it's only a warning shot. And I need to tell you this because you might not believe me, but what Kendrick did on Like That was not a diss track. It was a warning shot. And for someone like J. Cole, who prides himself on wordplay and punchline, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was disappointing. But I also believe that the main diss of this record is not as good as it should be, because J. Cole rips a page out of Jay-Z's book and breaks down Kendrick Lamar's discography, kind of like Jay-Z did with Nas on Takeover, going as far as to say that Damn and Good Kid, Mad City are classics, but that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was not that good, and surprisingly, that To Pimp a Butterfly was boring. And though on the surface I respect it, cause a diss is a diss, I do feel like this kind of feels flat compared to when Jay-Z did it, for example. When Jay-Z talked about Nas and how he fell off, it hits hard because that was the public sentiment. People really felt like Nas fell off. And though I think you can call Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers a bad album, and you might be able to walk away from that, calling To Pimp a Butterfly boring is insane coming from J. Cole. Like, I don't know, there's some points where you gotta understand who the messenger is and what your role plays in terms of like what you're saying, and I guess J. Cole lacks the self-awareness to see that. This is almost like if Drake got on a track and said something about someone using ghostwriters. Like, dog, we know what you are. We've listened to For Your Eyes Only, and though I've come around on the album, I do remember the 4 years where people cooked J. Cole for how boring it was, and because of that, it just comes off as a very distracting bar. But I do think there are some cool things in the record.
He averaging one hard verse like every 30 months or something.
When J. Cole says that Kendrick Lamar averages one hot verse every 30 months, I respect it, man. And even if I don't believe it's true, I do think it's good diss, especially if you consider that 30 months ago, if I do my math right, was around the time when Family Dies dropped.
Smoking on your top 5 tonight.
Which, to be fair to Cole, was the last time Kendrick shook the system. And in that sense, it does have some validity to it. And I also do like that J. Cole says fuck the Grammys, just because, like, fuck fuck the Grammys. But it also works as a diss towards Kendrick Lamar, as Kendrick Lamar is Mr. Grammy. Whenever Kendrick Lamar drops, you can expect him to get 2-3 Grammys, especially because it feels like the Academy has been on a constant apology tour since they robbed them. Shout out to Macklemore.
Fuck the Grammys, cause them crackers ain't never done nothing for me.
But what Cole also essentially implies is that the hype that Kendrick Lamar receives is mostly from white people and not the actual culture, quote unquote, which, hey, again, I respect. I like this type of bar. But that's about it in terms of bars that really stood out to me. And again, I cannot stress how concerning this is. Do you know how mid a diss track has to be for most people not to hype it up? Like, this isn't about me being a Kendrick fan or being a J. Cole hater, because personally, I like J. Cole. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, 7-minute drill in comparison to Kendrick's Like That verse is just not up to par. And if you go on Twitter, the aura that J. Cole built over the last 2 years doing features and all that, it's basically evaporated overnight. Though it also doesn't help that My Delete Later is probably J. Cole's most forgettable project probably ever. In terms of the songs, there's not a single project that I look at in terms of KOD, For Your Eyes Only, 2014 Forest Hill Drives, Born Sinner, The Sideline Story. None of those albums are worse than this project. And sure, you could say that it speaks to how good J. Cole is, but it also speaks to how bad this record was. It was just a misstep in terms of hyping up the fall off, because for the most part, it just kind of feels like it has the opposite effect. Compare this to a couple weeks ago when a lot of people were saying that J. Cole might change the hip-hop landscape with the fall off, and the perception on J. Cole is kind of night and day. I made a video a couple weeks ago, and in that video I said that the fall off was very important in terms of how we rank the big three, and considering that was pre-Kendrick Lamar, the statement holds true more now than it did before. Or in other words, J. Cole is under a lot of pressure to deliver, and if he doesn't, you best believe they're gonna give him the bronze. And at this point of his career, it might just be a permanent bronze. But like I said at the beginning of the video, I am excited. Personally, I'm someone that believed that J. Cole might not even respond. I just thought it to be too out of character. But now that he responded, Drake has to respond, or at least I'd imagine. Especially because the public perception of Drake is already looking weird. Mostly because instead of responding to Kendrick, he's responding to people like Nav and Rick Ross. So in a way, it does look like Kendrick has Drake shook. If only because Drake is known to reply quickly and yet he's nowhere to be seen. But again, beef is good, competitiveness is good, and that's why I applaud J. Cole, and of course I applaud Kendrick Lamar as well, because this is what hip-hop needs above everything else, competition. And I am very excited to see how this develops, because honestly, this is only the beginning. Kendrick will respond to J. Cole eventually, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, shout out to all the people that were there live when I was reacting to this song and kind of breaking it down. I don't know if I'll ever do a live stream again, but I found it pretty entertaining to be surrounded by y'all. But with all of that being said, I want to give a shout out to y'all. I want to give a shout out to God. Give a shout out to me. Give a shout out to Jay Dilla. And I'm going to let the outro roll. And yeah.